E-rank boy with useless skills becomes the strongest with godlike powers. The defense force are off the shore of an island, watching as a battle unfolds when one of the crew members asks the captain if it is really alright for them to not get involved or provide support for the people on the island. But the captain reminds him that they are nameless side characters, so the second they get too close to the action, they will be killed for plot development. It is best that they just leave the fighting up to the hunters on the island instead. And on that island, we see a man running through the brush of the forest while being chased by a monster of some sort. But this was all part of his plan, as he was simply leading it to his party so they can jump it. However, as the team ready themselves to jump whatever comes out of that forest, they are met with an army of ants and now have to fight one-on-one battles. Unfortunately, these guys have never had a fight where they didn't gang up on their opponent, so now that they have to have fair fights, their lack of skill is apparent. The swordsman gets bodied by one ant, while the mage squad completely fails to do any damage with their flame spells. They came with intentions of jumping the ants but got their asses jumped instead, and the last one standing has lost the will to fight. The leader of the team is laid out on the ground, slowly bleeding to death, and has no one to blame except himself for losing the battle. But before he can lose consciousness and become ant food, the ant on top of him gets knocked off by a new hunter who clearly knows what he is doing. This skilled hunter wastes no time and immediately pops a revive on the whole squad to save him from dying, but in doing so he leaves his back wide open for the ants to attack. However, he didn't come here alone and has his team members save him with a lightning strike. Meanwhile, another one of his teammates, Yuho, is busy manhandling the ants with nothing but his fists, and the lightning wielder soon joins in as backup. These are some of the few S-ranked hunters, and the gap between these guys and the average schmuck is so vast that no one even comes close to their level of strength. Once the two have taken care of most of the ants, they tell the healer Byung-gu that he went too far ahead of them, which is too reckless to be doing in a situation like this. He apologizes, but he needed to rush out to save these people as soon as possible, and besides, he had faith in their ability to keep him safe while he healed them. Soon after, a giant white ant appears, although it doesn't look like this is the boss. It is most likely the leader of the monsters here. So he leaves the injured people in the care of Byung-gu and tells Bunsak to join him in battle to take down this monster. They both charge forward and ready their weapons for an attack, so as the ant attacks Yuho first, he holds it in place while Unsak comes in from above and hits it with a lightning strike. While the ant is stunned from the shock, Yuho takes the opportunity to rip off its mandibles, enraging the ant and causing it to kick him away. But he wasn't done yet, as he uses those same mandibles as projectiles and launches them straight through the abdomen of the ant, killing it in one blow. However, they are far from done, since several more of those ants emerge from the forest and Yuho is starting to get excited by the battle. He powers up and begins emanating purple energy, while Unsak does the same and releases a torrent of consecutive lightning strikes at the incoming horde. But while this is going on the other side of the city, there is another S-ranked hunter leading a team of side characters to stop the advancement of the ants. Once the average schmuck signals that everyone is ready, Choi unleashes a powerful fire blast that instantly roasts all the smaller ants, but the larger ones manage to make it through, so the cannon fodder must now engage in battle to hold them off. More than a decade ago, a portal that connects this world to many others opened, and various kinds of monsters and magical beasts began to invade. They soon realized that they were unable to do any damage with the weaponry they had, and they would have been at the mercy of the invaders if not for one thing. Humans began to awaken special abilities, and these people were called hunters. They are classified from a rank where we see all the really impressive hunters, all the way down to this loser in E rank. But once an ability is awakened, it can no longer be developed. 3 years have passed, and we see a construction site which has now become a dungeon raid site as a man grabs some breakfast before he heads in. One of his friends calls out to him as he eats, and he is surprised to see him there since he heard that Park quit being a hunter. That was true, but then he got backhanded by the economy after his wife got pregnant a second time, so he needs to earn a lot of money quick, and a dungeon raid would be perfect for it. They continue to catch up as we see the man himself, Jinwoo, the same loser that was at the bottom of the rankings. He greets everyone nervously as he enters, so Park asks why everyone seems to know who he is, wondering if he is some kind of really strong hunter, but it's actually the opposite. Jinwoo is regarded as the single weakest hunter that has ever existed. He even managed to get himself injured and hospitalized in an E-rank dungeon, so much so that they might as well create a new F rank just for him. So if his widely known weak status has become somewhat of a good sign whenever he is called in a dungeon raid, since it means it is probably going to be a really easy one. Jinwoo heard every word they just said about him, but it's not like they are wrong, since he really is just that weak. He gets called out by a woman called Juhi, and it seems Jinwoo knows her from a previous mission they had gone on together, but greetings aside, she is more worried about his newest set of injuries and asks him what could have happened this time. They sit down and Jinwoo explains the embarrassing fact that he got injured in the lowest ranked of the dungeons and the team didn't have a healer on hand because they thought it would be way too easy for any self-respecting hunter to ever get themselves injured, but they hadn't accounted for him, Jinwoo's existence. Jui gets mad on his behalf, but Jinwoo already knows that it wasn't their fault, it was his own for being so weak in the first place. The time to enter the dungeon has arrived and they are all about to enter the dungeon, so this man, Song Chi, suggests that he be out in the position of party leader for this expedition. No one is opposed to the idea, so he leads them all in, and before Jinwoo enters, he gets a friendly reminder to stick as close to the group as possible in order to not get hurt again. Jinwoo's only weapon is a small knife with very little magic power, and this is all of his meager earnings are able to afford him in the way of equipment, but he swears he will do his best regardless. Elsewhere, the president of a company is having a talk with his assistant. The demands from the public are as contradictory as ever. They demand that he finds a way to stop the dungeon breaks, but also want the items that are acquired from the dungeons, though it is not like he is in a position to complain about their requests since he makes his money by selling the items gotten from the dungeon. The crystals harvested from the corpses of magic beasts can be sold for money, but the process of gathering them is really bloody. Luckily, Jinwoo has managed to get one on his own for the first time. However, in his celebration over the money he will get after he sells this gem, he leaves himself wide open and has to be brought back to reality by a call from Jui, warning him of an incoming attack. Jinwoo manages to raise his knife in time to defend himself from the goblin's strike, but his knife merely breaks in the process. He barely manages to dodge the goblin's follow-up strikes, but as he tries to defend with his knife again, the cheap thing shatters and he ends up getting himself stabbed in the stomach. Jui wants to go help him, but Park tells him to stay back while he handles it, and even though he hasn't gone on a mission in a long time, he has still got it in him as he slashes the goblin to death in one strike. Jinwoo pulls the sword out of his stomach, which is not something a doctor would recommend, and Park tells him to recover while he takes care of the next magical beasts in his place. He asks Jui to heal Jinwoo while they've got the time, so she heads over to him and begins the process. She puts her hand over the gushing wound and starts healing him as a light gathers around her hands and Jinwoo seems to be recovering slightly. On the other side of the cave, Jinwoo can see the rest of the hunters actually doing their jobs, and he probably feels like shit both because of his injury and the injury to his pride after he promised himself that he would do well this time. We get a look at the top-of-the-line equipment and magic gems being sold in this world, all things that Jinwoo will never be able to enjoy in his lifetime. Mana crystals harvested from the dungeons can be used as weapons as well, but their effectiveness is inferior to that of magic gems. However, President Go has received a new government mandate that wants to use the mana crystals as a new form of energy production since it is safer than nuclear energy, but still more efficient than any other form of renewable energy that exists in their world, so it is the ideal source of energy. Thus, the government is researching methods to generate electricity from the use of magic gems and mana crystals, making hunters even more crucial to society at large. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the party have just managed to take down a werewolf and are celebrating their victory over it, while Jinwoo is over in the corner getting healed up again, as he is the only one who managed to get seriously hurt. June was on his side earlier, but now after seeing how badly he keeps getting injured in fights, she is starting to question why he even became a hunter in the first place. If this keeps up, he's going to end up with injuries that are too severe for her to treat at some point. He apologizes, but Jui isn't interested in his apology. Instead, she wants him to be more careful with himself in the future. Jinwoo looks over to the rest of the hunters and they are busy splitting up the loot according to the work that was done in battle. And if we're talking about team contributions, then Jinwoo did basically nothing for the entire fight. So after this whole mission, all he has to show for it is a single E-rank magic gem and a broken dagger which he spent his life savings on. He is starting to reconsider coming out here and risking his life just to make no money, but then one guy on the team calls everyone's attention to a huge hole, and they all gather around to figure out what this thing is. It looks like a cave, but they are in a dungeon, so it is much more likely that happens to be a double dungeon. It's rare, but they've heard of it before, and their hunch is confirmed by the fact that they've already killed the dungeon boss, yet it hasn't started closing like a regular dungeon would. It seems like there will be more profit to be made deeper in the dungeon, but Song Chi tries to be the voice of reason and tells everyone that normal protocol is to inform the association of the double dungeon and follow the instructions that they give afterwards. The team doesn't want to do that since it would basically mean that they give up the rights to all the untapped loot that is probably waiting for them down there. Then Park says the words that never lead to anything good. It's just an F-rank dungeon. What's the worst that could happen? And then his wife and child get brought up and how he needs to make more money and get back to them. Yeah, I'm calling it now, he's not making it back from this one. Song Chi understands the point they are trying to make, but he wants to listen to everyone's opinions before he makes a decision on the matter. The team members all speak up with a mix of approval of the plan to venture deeper and realization that this is a clear death flag. In total, there are 6 votes for going into the cave and 6 votes for going home. So someone needs to break that tie, and the only one left who hasn't voted is Jinwoo. The decision is left up to him, and while he is well aware that a D-rank dungeon is insanely dangerous for him to be in, with his father missing, he is the only one in his family that can earn any money, and he's already got a ton of financial burdens. His mother is in the hospital, and his sister still has to go to college, so he can't stay broke forever. After he makes the decision to go into the dungeon, we cut away to a lab where people are getting tested for their magical powers. And outside in the waiting room, associations are waiting, ready to sign on any promising new hunters. And this rank hunter, Choi, has told his people that regardless of age or gender, if there is a talented individual available to be recruited, then recruit them. Back in the dungeon, the party has been walking for 40 minutes now with no success in finding anything of value yet, and the portal to a dungeon closes after an hour since the dungeon boss was defeated. So that means they only have another 20 minutes before they run out of time altogether. Jinwoo apologizes to Juhee for making the decision to come down here when he knew she wanted to go back, but she isn't even mad about having to come down here. What she is mad about is that Jinwoo is still being such a reckless idiot with his body by deciding to come down into such a dangerous, unexplored dungeon, even though he was getting injured so badly earlier. That goblin stab could have been the end of him if she weren't around to heal him, and he realizes that now, so he gives it some serious thought. Juvi sees that Jinwoo is finally taking her safety concerns seriously, and that gets her to calm down a bit. But to make it up to her, she wants Jinwoo to get dinner with her after this, and Jinwoo gets flustered. But before he can give an answer, the party arrives at the boss room. They enter, and I'm sure you are all familiar with this room with the giant statues. They are at a loss for what they are supposed to do here, but find some writing on the walls. While it is being read by Song-chi, Juhi gets freaked out because she's pretty sure the eyes of the statue just moved. The doors to the room suddenly slam shut, and one member of the team who didn't want to come in the first place recognizes that something is wrong and tries to leave. But his exit is cut short as he is cut in half by one of the guard statues. Everyone starts freaking out because not only did someone just die, he was taken out in an instant with power that none of them can handle. Jinwoo looks back to the main statue, hoping that it doesn't move as well, but to his horror, it looks back at him. Jinwoo has lived through enough near-death experiences to know that this is one of them, so he yells for everyone to get down before it is too late. The giant statue unleashes a death ray that Jinwoo just barely managed to evade along with Juhi, but many others aren't so lucky and end up charred. Yet even if he got lucky this time, Jinwoo is sure that he will be killed sooner or later. The people panic and instinctually feel like they should run away, but from what they have seen happen so far, they are sure that they will be killed the second they move. Song yells out for everyone to stay exactly where they are, and Jinwoo checks on Juhi, who is thankfully still in one piece, but unconscious for the moment. Song thanks Jinwoo for his earlier warning when he shouted for everyone to get down since it saved them all. But it's not like he knew what was going to happen or anything. All he knew was that it was going to be bad. Jinwoo soon notices that Song didn't manage to escape that attack unharmed and has a lot of bleeding from his arm because his arm is just gone. He says he can bear the pain for now, but asks Jinwoo to help him stop the bleeding for now. Normally, he would have asked Juhi to treat him since she is the healer here, but no offense, she's kind of a wimp when it comes to seriously dangerous situations, so she's curled up in the fetal position over there. That is the reason that she only ever goes on low-level raids despite being a B-ranked healer. Personally, Song has been on a few B-ranked missions, and he can say with certainty that this thing is way above B rank. It might be A or even S for that matter, so they have no chance of beating it. He recalls the writing on the wall which said all who enter must worship the god, then praise the god and believe in the god. Those who fail to do this will not leave alive, so Jinwoo deduces that the god in question must be that statue. There is no way that the statue sees them as its opponent since it isn't attacking them, so Song suggests that they just wait out the worst of it and look for an opening to escape. But not everyone is on board with this plan. This guy isn't going to sit around and just wait to be killed. His life was going too well for him to let it end now. He finally signed a contract with a good association, and he even got the new Jordans on sale, so no matter what, he's going to make it out of here. The dude charges up and dashes away, and it seems like he's going to. Oh, never mind. Well, at least the Jordans are okay, but I can't say the same for the rest of the guy. For the others that didn't move, that display just cemented the fact that this thing could easily kill them all if it wanted to. It is just choosing not to do so for some reason right now. But the question is why? Why hasn't it killed them yet if it has the power to do so to anything? Choosing not to attack makes it different from the other magical beasts that exist inside the dungeons, so Jinwoo thinks back to the first command on the wall of this room which said to worship the god. But to know if his theory is right, there is something he needs to check first, so he begins to stand up despite knowing it is dangerous. Song tries to stop him, but Jinwoo's eyes show that he is determined to make it through this alive. He slowly rises to his feet, and as he does this, the eyes of the statue begin to glow as it is about to fire its laser beam at him. Jinwoo immediately ducks back into a crouching position, and as he does, the statue's eyes stop glowing. This confirms his theory, so he yells out to everyone that they must bow to the statue. They don't understand what he means by that, but from what he has seen so far, the statue only attacks if your head is past a certain height, so if you keep your head low to the ground, you'll be safe from it. That is probably what the first command on the wall meant when it said to worship the god. Jinwoo bows his head to the statue, and with no better options, everyone follows his lead, hoping that his plan actually works. Jinwoo was correct in his assumption as the eyes of the statue stopped glowing altogether, but then you see, that's where the real trouble began. That smile. That damned smile. Park is creeped out by the statue's face, but seeing that its expression changed, he decides to take a leap of faith and stand up to see if anything happens when he does, and surprisingly, there are no death beams shot his way, so believes they have cleared the challenge and are free to go home. But just as everyone was celebrating their survival, the second health bar popped up and the statue started moving again. And this time it gets up from its chair, so they are even more panicked than before. Song turns to Jinwoo and asks if he has any more ideas to help them get through this, but he doesn't have an instruction manual on this kind of thing. The best he can think of is the second command that said to praise the god, so they must need to praise it in order to stop it from attacking. One man from the back steps up and tells everyone that he has studied traditional folklore, so he knows how to praise God. He gets down on his knees and starts praying to the statue while everyone stands back and waits to see if the statue reacts to his praise. The statue definitely reacted, but instead of stopping its attack, it gave the guy the rumbling treatment and turned him into a puddle. One of the girls can't handle the gore she has just witnessed, so her knees give out and she falls to the floor, only to become the statue's next victim as it stomps her into pace as well. Song yells for everyone to scatter as fast as they can so that the statue can't get them all in one stomp. So they all begin running and Jinwoo grabs Juhee, who is still frozen in fear. Park is running for his life and thinking that he can't let himself die here, but let's be real, as soon as he started talking about his pregnant wife and kid, we knew he wasn't making it out of this alive. He runs over to one corner of the room and tells everyone that it should be safe over here, but he had forgotten about the smaller statue guards that were there and that they can attack as well. So before Song can warn him, Park gets his body split in two, and I don't think he's going to get to see his wife again. Jinwoo continues to run across the room while wondering what exactly the command to praise it was talking about. There isn't exactly much to praise about that thing in the first place, but Jinwoo has to figure it out because he got Juhee into this mess and has to find a way to get her back out alive. He looks to the edge of the room and the statues that are all lined up against the wall. One wields a spear, another with an axe, and various other weapons which could easily kill them. But then there is one with a trumpet, and it seems like the safest option, so Jinwoo yells for Song to go stand under the statue with a musical instrument, and as he does, it doesn't try to kill him and just starts playing music instead. He yells for the others to get to the statues that are holding musical instruments, and as they do, the statues begin playing and they seem to be safe. Jinwoo drags Juhee over to a statue with a drum, but doesn't start playing immediately, so thinking quickly, he guesses that two people aren't allowed to stay under the same statue, so he tells Juhee to stay here while he runs to get to another statue. As he runs off, Juhee is left standing alone under the drum statue, and it begins to play, but as Jinwoo is running, the giant statue begins to chase after him and is inching closer with each colossal step. Jinwoo has the final musical statue in his sight, but the giant statue has its foot over his head, so he is moments away from becoming human jam. Luckily, as the foot came down, Jinwoo got out of the way and managed to save himself from being squished by Dark Soul's rolling, but in his haste, he had rolled into the statue holding a shield, and this one was going to attack, so before he knew it, he found himself with a shield being brought down upon him. A dust cloud is kicked up and Juhee screams out in tears, believing that Jinwoo has just died, but it's not over yet, and as long as there is still breath in his lungs, Jinwoo will continue to push forward even if he has to crawl. The giant raises its foot once more to squash him, but luckily, Jinwoo managed to make it to the last musical statue while narrowly missing the giant's step, and as he does, the giant stops chasing after him and returns to its seat. Juhee runs over to Jinwoo's side to check if he is alright, and he says he is fine and I'm no doctor, but it looks like you're missing a leg there. Jinwoo hadn't even realized he lost his leg due to the adrenaline coursing through his veins, so Juhee tries to heal him, but with all the healing she's been doing today, it is starting to take its toll on her, so Jinwoo tells her to stop. She remains determined to heal him while the others assess the situation they are in now. It looks like it is finally over, So the survivors start blaming Song for agreeing to come down here even though half of them voted to come here. But now isn't the time to be playing the blame game since there is still one command left to be followed. The giant statue raises its hand and an altar appears in the center of the room. The rest of the group is confused when they see it, but Jinwoo correctly identifies it and says it is commonly used in mythology to offer living sacrifices to God. The final command is to believe in God, so it is pretty clear what they are supposed to do here, and Kim wastes no time in telling Song to go offer himself as a sacrifice because they all blame him for bringing them down here. Song doesn't fight it and agrees to go and have himself offered, but he says he wants to go alone in case it might be dangerous for them. As Song walks to his death, Jinwoo thinks about how this isn't entirely his fault since the group voted to come down here, and moreover, Jinwoo was the one who had the deciding vote. As Song walked into the altar, a flame was ignited, but he was still alive. He doesn't know what he is supposed to be doing, so he asks if there is anything else that is needed. Jinwoo asks two of the other people with him to help him up so he can go check the altar, but he assures them that it is safe since nothing happened to Song. The two agree to help him get there, and as they enter the altar, more flames are ignited. Song asks if Jinwoo has any idea what this is supposed to mean, but he doesn't have a definite answer yet. If they wait here, then they may eventually be rescued. But this is the 7th day since this dungeon was opened, meaning that it will soon become a dungeon break and the magical beasts from within this dungeon will be able to pass through and enter the human world. This is why people try to clear a dungeon boss before the time limit is up, so if they fail here, then that giant statue will be able to enter their world and cause untold mayhem. For now, they need to see what happens next, so Jinwoo asks the others to come into the altar so they can move on with clearing this test. They agree, and as they all enter, flames ignite on all sides of the altar and another ring of blue flames forms around it. This causes the door to open, but it also makes the weapon-wielding statues begin to move. Jinwoo notices that these statues do not move as long as you are looking at them, so he asks everyone to keep their eyes on the statues. However, this one girl has had enough and throws everyone under the no bus to save herself as she sprints out the door. It may seem selfish, but she did manage to make it out, so the others start to think there is hope of escaping. Jinwoo, on the other hand, isn't fooled. The boss music hasn't stopped playing yet, so that open door has to be a trap. The first command was to worship, then it was to praise, no, the third one is to believe, so it must mean they have to stay here until the timer of the blue flames runs out, and if that is the case, the open door is only there to tempt them into leaving the circle. Jinwoo tries to tell the others that they need to stay here so they can keep the statues from closing in, but they had already had their wills broken by this dungeon, so when an escape route has presented itself, there is no way they would be willing to stay. Kim tells Jinwoo that he is incredibly thankful to Jinwoo because it is all thanks to him that they have managed to survive this long. But he has had enough of this, and just wants to go back home and see his wife, so he's going to leave through the door. The only ones left are Jinwoo, Judy, and Song, and Jinwoo is struggling to keep his eyes on all the statues at once, so they keep inching closer and closer, and he is starting to think he might have been wrong about the objective. Song speaks up and says that he wants Judy and Jinwoo to leave through that door. He believes that the door won't close as long as one person remains on the altar, so he wants them to escape since they are still young and have their whole futures ahead of themselves. However, Jinwoo has lost a leg and Judy has lost all strength in her legs, so there is no way the two of them will be able to make it out together. Thus, Jinwoo asks Song to take Judy and get her to safety while he stays behind. Song agrees to his request, and though Judy was against it, Song knocks her out and takes her to presumed safety as Jinwoo wanted. Jinwoo is okay with how things ended. The only regret he has is that if he had known things would end like this, then he would have taken out more life insurance. The armed statues close in on him and begin to attack, severing an arm and leaving him at death's door, and Jinwoo can do nothing but wish he were strong enough to fight back against these things. He had his own dreams, his aspirations in life, so why does he have to die here? He gets stabbed through the chest and thrown onto the altar as the statue prepares to finish him off with its sword, and Jinwoo, completely powerless to do anything, just sits there and awaits death. But as the sword comes down on him and ends his life, a timer countdown ends and a status screen appears before Jinwoo. It's a quest, and it says that he will die if he doesn't accept it, so him not wanting to die yet, we see him accept. This was the end of episode 2. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.